Welcome to TechCabal Live, which is a series where we talk to key people helping to build the African tech ecosystem. Thank you for joining us today. Bosun is an entrepreneur, the co-founder of CcHUB, which has been around since 2010. CcHUB has been an integral part of developing the African tech ecosystem, starting with Nigeria, where it's been one of those sort of key sort of like instigators of sort of the wave of innovation and companies that came out of the Lagos tech ecosystem and the Yaba, the famous Yaba tech ecosystem. So Bosun, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Tomiwa. I look forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. So I want to talk about, and I've just described CcHUB, that whole sort of founding moment. There's tons of companies that have come out of Yaba. There's tons of innovation that came out of there. And I've talked to Femi longer about this before, but I want you to talk to us a little bit about the founding idea and the founding principle of CcHUB and what it is, how you guys think about your role within the ecosystem. I mean, you guys started out of Lagos. Now you're in Kigali. You guys acquired iHub. You're in Nairobi. So you're a lot more Pan-African than when you started. What do you think of your role as a member of the ecosystem?
It's an interesting question, and I guess the terminology you use is also what makes that question interesting. You know, when you say ecosystem, I know quite a number of people struggle with that terminology. But ecosystem is whatever it means in biology. You can literally transfer the same into an industry, really. And I think it's strong. You know that for countries like Nigeria and Africa. If we want to be honest with ourselves, for us to be able to compete in the global technology space, the concept of ecosystem is actually quite critical to our ability to do that. And the reason for that is that our industry is one of those where, like so many other industries, to be honest, that the requirement for competitiveness is rooted in quite a number of foundational development that you need to have in place. If you look at the core of technology, there's a lot of know-how that comes into place. You can't just wake up today and say, I want to set up a technology company. If you don't have the technical know-how that will be key to you being able to bring a superior product that can provide services to people to the market, it's almost impossible. It's also one of those industries where before you get your product to market, tons of capital is gone into building a product that you don't even know if people will buy. You know, and in some cases, even if you don't invest quite a lot in building your product, in scaling that product, the infrastructure that you require to scale it requires resources. And it's one of those areas where people have to invest in the unknown. It's also one of those spaces where, you know, the way you acquire customers is totally different from, say, someone that is selling sugar or rice, for instance. You know, so when you look at all those kind of things, then you realize that for any nation to boast of a competitive, technology or startup ecosystem, you do need to have a strong, to boast of it, a competitive technology industry, you do need to have a strong ecosystem. And the ability of the different key actors and stakeholders within that ecosystem to bring to the table the opportunities that will help ideas germinate, but also businesses thrive, is what will be responsible for your success. So when you look at key ecosystems in Africa, for instance, you point at, say, Nairobi, or you look at Cape Town and probably Joburg. I think those are the 2 or 3 that are somewhat at the level of Lagos or above. You will find that it's a melting pot of different key ingredients that you need to make exciting ideas happen. So when we started in Lagos, say 10 years ago, you will find that wasn't the case, right? When we started, we were the first even tech hub or co-working space. You couldn't just wake up and say, I have an idea around technology that I want to exploit. The only people who were building that sort of technology at that time were probably people, returnees, Ivy League kids, people coming back from Harvard, Stanford, and the likes. Those were the ones who could, because probably at home there's internet, had to pay for their server because they weren't local hosts who could bail you out then, or they had friends in high places that could connect them to capital. So when we started, what we wanted to do was to build that platform that is grassroots. And I still think when you look at the DNA of CcHUB, that's where CcHUB is different. And the way we measure our work is also different. We wanted a platform that could support the ordinary young Nigerian kid, with ideas who believe that they can create a solution to a problem. We wanted to build that platform that can attract resources to support them. That platform that can give them, the community through which they can work and get inspired. That platform that can expose them to other people doing exciting things that will then inspire them to believe that they are also able to do. And that was what we did with CcHUB. It became that organic place. When CcHUB started on a good day, there will be 150, 200 people in just a 200 square meter space. It was the level of serendipity in the space was exciting. Everyone wanted to come to CcHUB. When we started in 2010, we were hosting code parties at CcHUB where we will all sleep there overnight. By the next morning, we have some form of product that we're testing. So it gave us that, platform and test bed for a lot of people to try their hands on consumer-facing products. Remember that there was technology before them, but a lot of the technologies were stuff that companies were building for either large corporates or government. So a lot of the technology companies at that time were contractors. They were doing really well, building stuff, but they weren't building the sort of things that a lot of young people today wanted to build. So that was what we came to the market to do. And what inspired it was also the fact that we realized that technology could help leapfrog development on the continent. But for that to happen, there's a need for us to have our own local skin in the game, right? And that was what inspired CcHUB. So CcHUB didn't come to the market just thinking, we want to raise unicorns. There's so much money to be made from startup. For us, it wasn't that. We wanted to be that intermediary, that nexus point where things can happen. And as we talk, I can share some of the exciting things that I think has happened at that point over the last 10 years.
So let me ask about, so it's been 10 years. How has that mission changed over that 10 years? How do you think about it now? I mean, you can reel off a number of companies that have come out of CcHUB, but in 2020, how do you think about that mission? What's changed about the mission?
I don't think much is changed. I think what's the direction in which we're seeing and taking our work is the fact that we still see a lot of gap in what we call technology in Africa. We still think our work today is demanding from us that we're a little more thorough about how we think about technology. We think the uniqueness of technology in Africa will not necessarily come from copying models from Silicon Valley or any other location for that matter, because boundaries are now sort of disappearing, which means Netflix can create a product and easily get into the Nigerian market, or Stripe can build a product and easily take over Nigerian market overnight. Amazon can figure out fulfillment and create Amazon.ng, and that becomes the head of e-commerce in Nigeria or in Africa. But we think what's unique about our market and the way we need to be thinking of technology is that there are serious challenges that are unique to us, that people who don't understand the reality of our communities, the reality of our people, cannot help us unlock. And as you can see, digital is literally becoming everything. And you'll find that, for those who have tried building in Nigeria or in most African countries, you notice that oftentimes the ideas or the solution is not problem, but the systems around the solution is oftentimes what gets in the way of us applying technology to solve real problems on the continent. So I think the way we're thinking about it right now is being a bit more methodical and bringing science into the loop. How can we also not just use pervasive technology, which is just building stuff upon what's been built, but how can we also dig deep into science to better understand how technology can truly solve serious problems on the continent? For those who are interested in data science, for instance, there's still too much of what you call dark data in Africa. How can we use science to better help understand how to convert data and make them a lot more digital by connecting them to modern systems so that we can be more intelligent about the way we approach solving our problem. Right? There's still problems around how we educate people in Africa, which is unique to Africa. Right? Everyone is going digital. There's head tech, for instance, at the moment. But there are so many kids that are not connected to the internet who don't have the right device. How are we going to be able to fix their problem? So it takes understanding the reality of our own issues to creating those problems. And you'll find that the existing technology, the way they've been applied in the West, may not suffice. So there will be a need for us to start thinking a bit deeper than we're thinking now, which is why you see that CcHUB, even with the pandemic, work is not really been affected. One of the things that we've been doing in the last 2 years, for instance, that is totally off startup, is figuring out the best way to work with government to use technology in really smart ways. And some of those involves us doing research and development. So with the Nigerian Institute for Medical Research, for instance, we've done medical trial around tuberculosis. This current pandemic with Corona, for instance, the system that they're using to manage testing was developed by the CcHUB design team, which is based in Rwanda, right? But quite a number of Nigerians in that team. That's the way we see that's where we see technology going. And we think for us it's not only about startups. Startups, we believe they're just a tiny part of the puzzle in terms of how we figure out how to use technology on the continent. Startups will always build, but beyond startups, how do we help other stakeholders also use technology smartly? If you think about large corporates in Africa, there's a lot of non-consumption in that space. Their technology consumption is quite bare minimum. They consume what they need to automate their system, and that's where it stops. They don't consume innovation. So imagine if we can get a lot of our large corporate organizations on the continent thinking really smartly about how they apply technology. Imagine the level of productivity that we'll be able to raise. Imagine how competitive they will become. Imagine how much more jobs they will create. Imagine how many companies from Nigeria can then expand into Africa and probably the rest of the world, thereby giving us our home multinational from Nigeria. Innovation is the only thing that can help us achieve that. And until we start to see technology from that perspective, we will struggle. So for us at CcHUB, that's what's changed. And it's not changed, it's always been there. But when we started, startup was the in thing. Every young person wanted to build, and we had to support that ecosystem. But now we're also shifting beyond just startups to think more broadly about technology in Nigeria and Africa as a whole.
Cool. Okay, so let me ask you. So talking about startups, talking about sort of some of the early days. Talk about a couple of startups that really sort of validated the moment. The mission for you that validated that what you guys were doing was great, or talk to me about two experiences where you're like, okay, this is it, we're really on the right
path. I think I'll use so CcHUB. What I always tell people, and media doesn't do justice to it. There's no bigger angel investor in Nigeria and probably Africa than CcHUB.
All right.
There's no bigger, and I'm not kidding. If you know any angel investor out there, they should bring out their numbers and I can give them my number.
All right, so let's hear it. More details.
So at CcHUB, we've seen a lot of failed startups, right? Because we work at the grassroots, you find that we've invested in
and that's critical. That's part of the environment.
Yeah, it's part of the environment at the very early stages. And what happens is that the success rate at that level is quite poor, right? We've invested in, probably over 60 startups at the angel level. And we've learned quite a lot. But two startups that I'll use to answer your question is Budget and LifeBank. All right. So a lot of the things we learned from Budget went into LifeBank, and you can see the trajectory of LifeBank. Both of them are successful. They're different kind of organization. Also, you need to understand that the DNA of CcHUB makes us always look out for companies that are solving significant social problems, or in sustainable ways. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not a social focus entity, even though we call ourselves social innovation. Social innovation in our name means that whatever problem we solve needs to address significant social problem, or you have to be able to make money out of it. So when we started with Budget, we were really quite big on transparency, because we started in 2010. Arab Spring, enough is enough, started about the same time. The vibe then was that we can use technology to disrupt the way we were being governed around the world as a whole, not just in Africa. And that was the movement globally, right? So obviously the first startup that we funded and we supported from idea was Budget. And Budget went on to be extremely exciting. When it started, people were saying, how was Budget going to survive? There was no clear model behind it. Who's going to fund Budget? Budget is a social enterprise. It's not per se for profit, but they've been able to figure out ways over the years to actually generate revenue beyond funding from foundation. They started providing support around participatory budgeting. I know that they moved a little into some data science work, visualization and things like that. But Budget demonstrated what we wanted to show. For us, it was about building a case for why technology is important and why we needed to invest in it, right? And for us, Budget showcased what was possible with using technology, for instance, to bridge the gap between governments and citizens, to get more citizens involved in the way they are governed, to use technology to open up government a little. Budget demonstrated that. And Budget over time quickly moved away from, I think after 2 years or thereabout, they moved away from CcHUB. They got some significant funding from Gates Foundation at some point. I think they were about 50 or 60 employees. I don't know how many they have, but they're still doing really well. But between Budget and LifeBank came tons of other startups, from 500 shops that got acquired by Conga, which led to Clive. Clive is now working with Booking.com in Netherlands, to the guys who were making vacant boards, to WeCyclers. There's Autobox, so many startups in that space. But what then happened in the process was that we learned a lot in that process. And the process was also when we created the Tony Elumelu Foundation now called the team, right? That was created by CcHUB. When we didn't have money to invest, we went to Tony and said there are young people who wanted to build exciting things. They can't even pay their own transportation from home to the hub. And, Tony invested 5K in about 20 startups. And I think he liked what he saw, in that process and decided to scale it across Africa. But one thing we learned was also the fact that as at this time, funding wasn't commonplace. Like if you're not coming from, if you're not a returnee, you weren't raising money. That's the reality back then, right? A lot of the people who were raising money were highly connected. So funding wasn't commonplace. So we started figuring out after getting 5K, breaking that barrier of that, helping people get 5K, 10K. Then it was the next level. But we realized that because of the ecosystem that we have built, when startups come into our portfolio, they get really used into drawing from CcHUB, right? Because we help them through different things. And we figured it wasn't gonna be successful that way. We figured it wasn't gonna be successful that way. So it was on LifeBank that I decided to change that.
Okay.
So we invested, I think the first investment into LifeBank came from CcHUB. I think we invested about $30,000 Then we gave them some loan and things like that after that. The LifeBank needed more money, and I told my team that LifeBank was only going to be with us between 12 months to 18 months. So we went really hard, and I think Temi wasn't very happy with CcHUB at this point. And we had learned our lessons because shortly before then, we invested in another startup that I'm not going to call the name. I think about the same amount of money. This startup, exactly what they were doing got bought in a way. So there was a bank in Nigeria that asked them to provide the same service they were doing to them. And this bank paid them millions of naira. Then the founder separated that income from the actual income of the startup. I'm talking millions. And the founder was balling, and he separated that money. That money became his personal money. It was the intellectual property of the company that you sold as a service to this bank. But anyway, so we decided we will force our people to learn also how to raise money.
Gotcha.
That we're going to force them out to raise money. And with LifeBank, we insisted we weren't going to put anything again. And we pushed Temi out. So Temi had to look for a way on our own to raise money. But by the time she was there raising the money, we had our own growth capital fund as well, which we now again invested in her, but alongside other people like Hosa, and a few other investors. And, the rest is history. So those are two examples of startups that I think if you look at them and their journey, you'll be able to point out a lot. But I always tell people that when we're building CcHUB, for us, it wasn't just about our own portfolio. TechCabal started from CcHUB.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it started from CcHUB as an idea. We also built it in such a way that we didn't need to be investing in you. Yeah, we didn't need to be investing in you. For us, it's about building that ecosystem to support you. When he came back from Canada to Nigeria, and he met me on the ground floor of CcHUB, and he told me what he wanted to do with Fora. I said, I'm not sure. I see Fora, but you know what I'm going to do? Tell me whatever you need, whatever I can do for you, I'll do for you. And we gave you the space at CcHUB. He did Fora. Fora wasn't successful. Then he decided to do Andela with Jeremy. Andela started from CcHUB. Their first recruitment was done at CcHUB. Their first trading was done.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that. So Andela started from CcHUB. TechPoints at some point was working out of CcHUB at the very, very early days. So that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to build serendipity, build a platform that can encourage serendipity, where if you have an idea, you come into, you can meet other people that can inspire you. The likes of Chuka used to work out of CcHUB. Delivery science, they used to work out of CcHUB. It was that place, and I think that was the experience that shaped the way we still do the work we do today.
I'm going to talk about this funding and capital question, Bosun, because it's kind of a big one, and some people have asked about it before. I want to know the CcHUB answer to this, and I want to know from the startups that you've seen, the companies you've seen succeed the most, how did you guys approach capital, raising capital for CcHUB? And overall, in terms of how people sort of build out revenue, what have you seen work best? I have questions about bootstrapping successfully in Nigeria, but capital and revenue, just your thoughts, what you've seen, what's worked for the startups that you've seen in the game. Any thoughts about that?
So when we started, we were quite big on bootstrapping when we started.
Okay.
We were actually quite bullish on it. We wanted to, and part of the reason why we wanted to encourage bootstrapping wasn't necessarily because we think funding wasn't essential. We actually believed strongly that you can't, for most technology businesses, you still need a lot of resources to be able to get things off the ground. But what we saw was that focusing heavily on funding wasn't going to lead us where we were headed at the beginning, and there was a reason for that. It was quality. Okay. So the quality of the solution that many people were building back then wasn't where it needed to be, right? We had a startup in Nigeria. Again, I'm not going to call name. That actually exposed that. I'll call it exposed, but the startup is at the heart of the question that you asked. So this startup was one of the first people to benefit from the Tony Elumelu funding that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And the founder went online and talked a lot about how 5K was not enough money to kickstart anything. And this was about the time where Jason and Sim we're already in the market with, a couple of millions that they raised.
A couple?
At the beginning it was a couple. Yeah, at the beginning it was a couple. Then they raised much more. And I think people like Jason was quite bullish at that point. He's changed his mind.
He's changed the tune entirely.
It was quite bullish at that point about how funding is critical and things like that, which was when he started Spark as well. So it was difficult to preach bootstrapping.
Yeah.
It was extremely difficult. But the reason why we were encouraging it then was that the startup that was complaining about 5K was at CcHUB with $5,000, young people out of the university, and for about 3 to 6 months, I never saw a product that worked.
Gotcha. Yeah.
A few times that I called these startups to do demos to me, it was always product that was crashing. It was not a product that was ready.
Yeah.
So for us, because we were starting at grassroots, we were also quite conscious of the fact that you can't be helping people raise money when they can't actually build. I remember this was at a time where it wasn't that easy for you to hire engineers, right? You couldn't start a startup back then in Nigeria without being a technical person. The few companies who started, without the founder being the technical person, Paga is a good example. They had to put their engineering team outside of Nigeria at the beginning.
Yeah.
So for us, it was important that if we were pushing you, you're a technical founder, you could build stuff, and that's why bootstrapping was essential. But I think over the years, we've realized that it's hard, it's tough, for people to build and scale. And we've also seen businesses who started from Nigeria with good funding, and they've been able to build, sustainable business as well, over the years. So we've shifted away from preaching bootstrapping, as a concept, but we still think that there's an element of it that we all need to revisit. I personally currently have had this conversation with E a couple of times, where I still think how much money you've raised is not a yardstick of a successful startup.
I don't think it is either.
We can't, nobody can lay claims to that. We've seen people raise 60, 50 million in Nigeria, and they've gone down on that, So how do we...
Jimmy has raised, hundreds of millions, I think. And you wouldn't call that a success,
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've seen quite a number of that. Money raised just means wrong way. In all fairness, it means wrong way.
And people to pay back.
Exactly.
People that must be paid back.
And money for advertisement. We've seen startups did, billboard, acquire customers from that, and customers they couldn't retain, products that people didn't find to be of top quality. So I think generally what we've seen over the years is that money raise is still not a measure. We still need to figure it out for ourselves. I don't think I have the answer, but I think the solution is somewhere around local money being part of the money that we're putting into tech. And the reason I say that is when we start to have local money in the money that goes into tech business, it's a good example. Imagine if Aliko is investing in say, a Paystack. For instance, let me use that as an example. What that does to you is Paystack can almost literally automate Aliko's entire business. Be it whether how they pay their partners, so the entire value chain can be automated. When you want to buy Aliko's product, online payment can be dragged into it. Aliko can use his influence to push cashless Nigeria a lot more. And what you get from there is that you start to see situations where revenue is also playing into how companies locally survive. We were in TechCabal was on the journey with us last summer in Asia, and when we were in Shenzhen, we met a guy that used to work for Tencent, and the guy left Tencent, and he was talking about how he joined another startup, and in less than 2 months, I think they had something about 15 million users or something like that. And he was boasting about how, because he had worked at Tencent, they have a pool of customers, things that you won't say in the West, but it's the reality. So it's the same thing in the West. When you see people who invest in startups, they're not just putting their money in startups. They probably own the companies who does advertisement, for instance, or they're linked to another entity that can unlock market. I think I'm suspecting that's where things still need to grow for us. Unlocking local money, not just because local money is essential, but because local money the people who own local money can help us unlock markets.
And unlock real revenue. I mean, I think, so the two things, and I'm going to summarize them, and because I want the audience to catch it and the team to catch it. I mean, there's a really key thing in here, which is don't fund products that are not ready to go to market. Don't go raise money for a product that's still crashing. Don't go raise money for a product where you don't have the technical chops to take it to market. Two, the revenue question, which I was going to ask as a standalone, but you've also kind of addressed, which is one of the things that really needs to grow in terms of our ecosystem is our ability to drive sort of interoperability, use our own money to not just invest, but to build businesses, to build revenue, to build opportunities for companies to actually grow their own sort of books. So I think that's critical. You're sitting pretty comfortably in both the East African tech ecosystem and the West African tech ecosystem. So you guys are in Lagos, you're in Kigali, you're in Nairobi, but how do you see the state of both of them at the moment? What's good, what's bad, where are the issues? Are you frozen or is this? So I'm saying you're sitting in both East Africa and West Africa.
Yeah.
How do you see the state of both ecosystems? Like what's strong, where are weaknesses that you see?
It's it's a question that people like to ask. I think when you look at East Africa, historically, East Africa is welcoming.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What are you saying about my people?
no, I don't know why, but it's welcoming in the sense that people from all over the world
it's an easier place to
find it easy. Find it easy to go there and operate. And I think what they then get, because I used to work for the UN, right? And in my few years at the UN, a lot of the projects that I led were in Kenya, in Uganda, I think Ethiopia as well. And you see more projects in that region because it's quite friendly. After your project, you can stay 2 more days, go for safari, or enjoy the city. In Nairobi, as dangerous as people will say it is, you can party the way you party in London, in Nairobi. Which you can't in Lagos. For you to party in Lagos, you have to be living on the edge.
I mean, Lagos is a party town, though.
It's a party town, but let me use when you're not a local, or when let me use this word that comes to mind. When a white boy comes from New York, when they're partying in New York, you don't need to have a car. Right? Yeah. You don't need to have a special driver stationed with you. If you're going to do that in Lagos, like a stranger, it's questionable. You don't know the taxi you're going to pay. So it's not as easy as. But in Nairobi, it's the way you party in London is the way you party in Nairobi. When you're done, you take your taxi and you go to your hotel. So it's quite friendly. And what you find with that ecosystem, they're rich because they attract both resources, talent, and quite a number of things that you require for an ecosystem to be strong. That's the honest truth. It's not only what they have locally, but Nairobi is quite cosmopolitan. Even places like Uganda, Kampala, they still attract foreign opportunities and resources way much more than Lagos or most West African countries. So I think that richness is what you find in that ecosystem in the East, which I think brings a lot of opportunity. But what you find with us is a can-do attitude. Every average person in the West, where us we believe we can create something. You're gonna break the barriers. You're gonna push. The energy is there. At that level, I think that's what you find, which means we're more organic in a way. Right? We're more organic, and that's why I give it to Nigeria. If you see Lagos ranking quite close to Nairobi or Cape Town, there's a lot of. You should actually give kudos to Lagos because the things that makes Nairobi or Cape Town, we don't have half of them. Honestly, we do not. So for us to even be where we are, it means that we're pushing hard. There's much more we can do. I think Nigeria, Lagos can be leader, but we still need to think more ecosystem. And I think what we need to also start to think in the West is that the different players in the ecosystem, and not all of them would make crazy money like startup founders will make or investors will make. That's the honest truth that I think a lot of us are ignoring. Some of us will be there to unlock opportunities for the future generation. Some of us will be there to help people build businesses that can scale. We've always built technology businesses in Nigeria, right? We've always done that. But how many of them have we built to the scale that they can scale to become global companies? I think we're just seeing signs of people trying to do that the way those before them did. And that requires that we're building that strong ecosystem that can power them. So there's so much more we can do. Things like how do we even imagine if someone can dedicate their lives to digital economy around Nigeria, for instance. CBN is trying to do that in a few times, but it's a joke. Imagine if someone can help them figure it out. Imagine if someone can help figure out how we can get internet to be a lot more cheap and reliable across Nigeria. Imagine how that person will be helping to unlock markets. For
I'm really excited about the right-of-way fees that everybody is dropping. Because he started it and everyone's picking it up. I hope it actually like leads.
I don't think that's strategic enough, to be honest, between you and I. I think one thing is, and because I have first-hand experience, Tommy Davis is on the call as well. Is one thing to reduce right of way. The cost that the companies will still need to spend to lay the fiber is significant. And the question they always ask is, who are the businesses in that location that will buy my services? When is the payback time for that investment that is going to go into that laying of that fiber? Right. Yeah. So because you're reducing, the right of way fee doesn't mean the problem is already solved. I think each state needs to start to think a lot more around their strategy for ensuring that if fiber is there, that consumption won't happen.
I think Ekiti is doing a lot of that thinking. I think Kaduna is doing a lot of that thinking. I think the rest of the country states are just following. But a couple of states that are doing pretty decent thinking around that.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to truly unlock it, not the slashing.
Not just the right of way fee, because it was also a pretty significant barrier, because it doesn't make any sense to put all this money out before what
I've heard that is much of a barrier.
Which one?
When we were doing Yaba, the fact that I don't know if they fixed this law now, but back then, if Main One is coming, and there's another company called I think Century something, and also a few of the other fiber owners. If they lay fiber in Yaba, each one of them would have to lay their own.
Yes. So it's co-location, so everybody can use the same pipes.
Exactly. So things like that. If we don't fix it, it will still become. There will still be a lot of redundancy, I think, and those are some of the issues that I believe that we need to sort out.
Yeah, I think 21st Century is the other company that you were mentioning. Hello, Yemi Gary, who's in the audience and has just clarified that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna start to push into the Q&A and start to ask some of the questions. I have some that people had sent ahead of time, so let me ask a few of those. So building a great team. What are the biggest challenges around talent management and building a great team?
that one, the answer I have for that question is CcHUB we're now the biggest in terms of, we've always been, to be honest, in terms of size of the team. I don't think there's any, we're not your typical tech hub, but let me use tech hub. I don't think there's any other continent. We're close to 92 people.
That's a good sign.
We're still growing. We still have quite a number of positions that we're trying to fill. And I can tell you that it is extremely, and it's getting even more difficult to find great talent in Africa.
It's getting more difficult? That's interesting.
No, it's getting more difficult because you're seeing more well-funded companies, so they can pay.
More companies looking for talent, and the pipe we're not
looking for talent. So it's a talent market at the moment. That's what people don't know. When they're saying unemployment, there's no great talent out there that can't find the job. I can assure you that, even right now. Right. So it's quite difficult building a team. And I think what we've done at CcHUB is to switch that and say, instead of just looking for great talent, we look for people who are committed. We look for people who are extremely excited about what technology can do to Africa. We look for people who believe that they can be challenged. And I think if you look at where the world is going, that's actually quite hard. Just if you think about it all over again. Because one thing is clear to me, knowledge right now, it's no longer that difficult to access, right?
Yeah,
knowledge is no longer difficult, but the most difficult thing right now is application. If you want to learn about building an airplane today, you can find tons of information that will take you closer to being able to start on the internet. But the challenge is, do you have the skills and ability to apply yourself to be able to apply that knowledge? I think that's what you're finding that is becoming extremely difficult. And that's what we did at CcHUB over the years. We've had the privilege of working with a lot of smart young people who are extremely committed to what we believe we set out to do. That's one thing about us. We may not be the best organization out there, but everyone who works for CcHUB, they feel like they're doing something extremely important. And they feel like we're always pushing the boundary. CcHUB we've never had any bad year in the 10 years of running CcHUB. And I'm telling you, even with this pandemic, instead of us to feel threatened, we're getting excited because there's so much to be done on the continent. That's why I tell people that I do not compete. I do not compete because we're lazy, right? People are not building what we need to build. No, I'm telling you the fact. People are not building what we need to build. People only go for a model that they see that works, right? And that's what the next person wants to build. And when you think that way, you find that it's not that difficult to say competitive on that continent. This has been my own experience. It's
Gotcha.
not that.
Fair enough. What has been your biggest sort of Pan-African challenge in scaling CcHUB? So,
I think a part of it is actually funding.
okay.
To be honest, because entities like CcHUB don't easily get funded. People think they get extremely well funded. No, we don't get funded. And the reason why I go to funding, I typically don't complain about money because CcHUB does, we're okay in terms of running.
Yeah.
We're okay. But still, funding is essential because the kind of work that we want to do requires some level of talent. And I've seen some of those guys lately. Some of them earn much more than me, to be honest.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not kidding you, man.
Yeah.
We're trying to when we lost our fantastic head of HR last year. She did an amazing job, set up on that part, and she left about when we were getting really crazy about this African expansion. So we figured we need someone solid to help us think through all these different. Even head of HR, the money they were asking for.
They were your senior.
It was double what I had, you know. So and at first we were like, what's wrong with all these new set of talent and young people? You know, they just believe that they command. But later you realize that some of them are actually what they're asking for.
Yeah.
That's the only truth. They watch what they're asking for. So for you to build the kind of organization that we're trying to build, you need resources. And the funny thing also is that we know that if we have these people, we can generate revenue. CcHUB has already gone into projects where we compete with McKinsey.
Yeah. Of course.
So a lot of people don't know 80% of what we do. That's another fact that is just out there. And it's difficult to focus on trying to explain it. It's extremely difficult. 80% of what we do at CcHUB, people don't have a clue about. So I think that's the biggest challenge with building. Of course, we also now believe, our African expansion is not based on just wanting to be seen as Pan-African. Tomiwa, you and I were part of HCCG. For me, I think the future of technology on the continent is around something called distributed innovation system.
Okay.
And the thinking behind that is that individual African countries don't have strong innovation systems. And innovation systems typically is what you need to enable innovation at scale in any nation. So innovation system would include your universities, for instance. What role are they playing to help make innovation happen? Are they producing the right talent? Are they doing the right research? Are they doing the right, even continuous personal development for staff of your company? All those kind of things, you look into that. Laws, policies will be about it. Local money that is available. Government's role will also be in there. Local VC will be in there. Intermediaries like CcHUB will be in there. So you have all that system that you need to have in place, which is what we call ecosystem today. All those things need to function for you to be able to compete, and more so in technology. And when you look around the continent, the only country with something that is close to being a strong innovation system will be South Africa, right? Kenya, a bit. The other country that is pushing that frontier is Rwanda. But again, size is in the way. Let's be honest. Size is in the way. And so what you find is that in a world that is moving so rapidly, if people keep telling us that you need to build your own innovation system, which is what the experts from the West will tell you, because that's how they've done it. But the reality is that if we have to go through the process of each country building its own innovation system, it will take us years and we'll keep moving in circle. And the rest of the world is moving at a crazy pace that we can't catch up with. So one opportunity that we have, which I think coincidentally when I started thinking about this, and this is why I got extremely excited about the free trade agreement, because I started thinking about this and I'd made presentation about it in a few places, and the free trade agreement came, and I thought, this is a massive opportunity for us to say our innovation system is actually distributed, where what I need to do as a nation is to have policies in place that helps me use my own strength efficiently while leveraging strengths of other countries around me, but also even those that are not around me. A good example is that our capital already comes from outside of the continent. Yeah. Why can't African countries come up with policies that makes it a lot easier for foreign capital to actually find it comfortable to come to Africa? A good example that is done it is Singapore. Yeah. Right? Singapore, they give all the incentive, whereby all the top VCs in the world, they also have their offices in Singapore. So they don't have to force you to register your company in the US for them to be able to invest in you. Why can't we? Another good example is Rwanda, for instance. Rwanda prides itself as being a test bed, where if you have a fantastic idea that governments in, say, Nigeria or Kenya will never let you test, go to Rwanda if you can explain it. Zipline is a good example, right? Zipline started there. They started flying drones around while Nigeria is still banning drones. Now Zipline, which is an American company, started in Rwanda, demonstrated in Rwanda. Now they're going back to America to actually implement their solution. Yeah. Right? And you know how much money they. So I think if we think more distributed, what will happen is that innovators and entrepreneurs can leverage different resources from different parts of Africa to accelerate their invention and business.
All right, so just for the audience, I'm going to speak a little bit. In case you don't know, Bosun mentioned the ATCG, which is the Africa Tech and Creative Group. And the ATCG is a group which both he and I are members of, but also has people from over 30 different African countries, all working to help push the implementation of the AFCFTA, which is the Continental Free Trade Act. And it's an important sort of group pushing for practical implementation measures across the continent to help entrepreneurs and small businesses across the continent do business with one another in other countries. Basically, I'm going to just promote it a little bit more. The website is atcg.community.
Why you do your work, eh?
I did do my work, right? I'm in the comms lead there, so please help us. atcg.community, please. And there's a form there for you to join. So it's important. I think that's really important. There's definitely a big opportunity in trading within the continent, in doing business within the continent that people that we haven't plugged into and that countries are not systematically making easier. There's a question here about why it's so hard to raise funding for startups in Nigeria. But I think that can also apply to why is it so hard to raise funding for startups in Africa. I mean, thoughts, Bosun, how would you answer that?
I don't say in Africa. It's not so hard in Africa. There's something I've been working on called STEM Cafe, right? And I decided to invest my own money in STEM Cafe. And when I opened in Nairobi, in less than 2 months of opening in Nairobi, I had about 5 investors line up to. Oh, wow.
Interesting.
But unfortunately,
local or international?
Curious. Well, in Nairobi, all the money in Nairobi, most of 99% is foreign. But money is money. I don't think that's a problem. But to the question of why is it difficult? I think we have people with money. I think the struggle is still that in a market like Nigeria, there are too many other things that people can put their money into that they know.
Safer or better understood.
Exactly. So if you already know what you can put your money into, less risk now, generate returns. Why would you put it into technology? Of course, you're beginning to see more of these people being frightened about the fact that the future is technology. I think people like Tommy Davis, they've done tremendously well in helping local people understand why they should invest. I still think there's much more that needs to be done. I think we need to pick a few really high net worth people, not just with money. This is my own way of looking at it. We need to pick people that, we're not picking them because of the money they have, but because of the interests that they have that technology can enable or disrupt.
Yeah.
Which is why
you could say Endeavor is doing something along those lines. They're not tech only, but they are interested in innovation and they're trying to help sort of higher net worth individuals understand sort of how to invest in this space, how to support
Yeah,
people.
so we're still. I think it's the same. We're still helping them understand how to invest. It's not just about how to invest. We need to help them understand how technology businesses can enable their businesses. So, and help them understand why it's way better to invest in a company that can build solutions that are built into your context as against outsourcing, because they already know how they get their solution. But what's the value in a Dangote or $10 investing in Paystar or floating it? We need to help people see that. And if we move away from that, for instance, if you say logistics, what's the value of any of these companies investing in delivery side? What's the value in that? We need to help them see what's the value of one of them picking up LifeBank. Beyond just that, the fact that LifeBank is going to become a big technology company that will make money. How can LifeBank help them improve the bottom line of what they currently do? And we need to show them also the threat that is attached to the fact that if they don't do that in future, their empire will be under threat. I think that's the next level in terms of unlocking local money.
So for Toby Davis, TD, and Yemi Kerry on this call, I mean, Lagos Angel Network, Africa Business Angel Network, you guys do great work in terms of helping people invest. But Bosun is saying the next challenge is how do we get these people to build technology into their companies, to get local companies to sort of build technology that helps serve their purposes. So we have a more deeply integrated ecosystem. I have a question from Tola and Jorin about your thoughts on education. So human capital has improved a bit from 10 years ago, but where do you see the challenges and opportunities in EdTech?
So I'll answer that question from the work that we do in education at CcHUB. Because again, that's one of the work that we do that it's not necessarily startup related. And there's a lot of science in it because we actually work with some of the top, when I say top, like EPFL in Switzerland, it's probably one of the top 3 universities in Europe. We do quite a number of work with them there. For me, I think the future of EdTech, we focus a lot on science education, so I'll speak to science education first, but it's not limited to science.
I love the STEM cafes, by the way.
Yes, well, STEM cafe is being challenged by Corona seriously, but we're turning things around. The future of EdTech, for instance, if I take it from science education, I think we need to find a way to ensure that science education is available to literally almost every child, whether they're going to become scientists or not. Just because science is around us in all we do. But the way we currently teach science doesn't work on the continent. And there are so many issues and reasons as to why it doesn't work. So the first one is teaching method. And this is cut across even almost every education, not just science. Our teaching method is largely instructional. So teacher is the center of attention in a classroom. They tell the kids what knowledge is. They expect the kids to, as we call it in our days, palm that knowledge. And if you palm the knowledge, then you can regurgitate the knowledge and apply. I think education is gone past that. Unfortunately, we've seen that the pandemic is bringing it back. Even investors are lapping up and investing in a lot of EdTech startups that probably just give instructions to kids, via videos and things like that. It's actually against the movement and the success that we've seen globally in education. Education is moved more towards what we call, some people call, in Kenya, for instance, it's called competency-based learning. We call it inquiry learning, but inquiry learning is really where you lead a child to discover. And nobody can argue against this because it comes back to that fact that through technology, knowledge is everywhere around.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point and it's a good method. I guess the challenge to that is that inquiry-based knowledge requires a motivated learner. It requires the learner to have discipline.
No. That's actually not true. Actually, I disagree with that.
All right,
so the beauty of inquiry learning is actually that it almost offers you the opportunity to, it's almost like an invitation, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't have to be that motivated. And we see a lot of this at STEM Cafe. When parents bring their kids for the first time, you see a lot of reluctant kids. And it happens every day. Like the mantra at STEM Cafe is that if they close STEM Cafe in a day and no child cried before they close the door, they've not done their job. And the reason why they do is when you bring your child at first, they don't want to leave their parent, they're reluctant, they don't want to go to another school, they don't want to learn. But by the time you're done with them, they realize that they're not necessarily in another school. They're using play to learn, and there's no child that doesn't enjoy playing. They play in different ways. So inquiry learning actually leads you towards play in a way. You're having fun, and in the process of having fun, you're discovering stuff, and then you're asking questions. The questions that you ask Tomiwa may be different from the questions that I will ask as Bosun. But at the end of the day, we're going to end up querying that knowledge that we're being given. And that's where the beauty of inquiry learning then comes to play. That the child on their own will discover. And in the process of discovery, they will also then start to seek out application, which is where the competency base is tied to. That everything you're teaching a child, they should be able to see how it relates to their environment. And I think more and more education technology companies need to start to ask themselves that question. What role are we playing to activate that? Especially as we see that technology and digital technology is now embedded in education strongly. Personalization is going to grow, and personalization only works if it's based around the learner. So that's something I think I find really strongly that's changed already about education. Some people will try to stay firmly with the whole approach. The other thing, quickly, without wasting time on this one, is that the institutions themselves, we can't do without them. Imagine how many teachers that we have out there. We can't throw them away. We still need them to teach. But they're in deep problem at the moment. Deep problem in the sense that the world is moving so fast for them. They've been trained in an instructional setting.
Yeah.
They've been made to believe that they're the center of attention. 3-4 months ago, the head of schools were still struggling as to whether they should automate their system. But now they are the place where all their kids are home, especially the private ones where the parents are paying. The kids are home, they don't know how to engage them. They're now being told that the only way to engage them is through technology. And they don't know where to start from. So what you start to see is a lot of them becoming clueless, rushing towards technology. They will end up buying the wrong technology. So they actually need a lot of support, both the school and the teachers. There's a need for us to ramp up, teachers training, and not only for the service teachers, but also in-service teachers as well. We need to really focus on how do we help them. They're going to end up with kids that are currently at home, that are learning on internet. My kids, when the pandemic started, they were struggling to be able to use a MacBook. All the problems with the moving your mouse, I click and things like that, because that's not what they used at school. Today, they're extremely comfortable with it in less than 2 months.
Yeah, they can probably teach you some things by now.
They're extremely comfortable with it. I saw a cheap 3D printer. I bought one of it, put it at home. They're learning 3D printing, modeling, and printing. Some of their teachers don't know this thing, right? So they're going to startup needs to start to think just beyond the learner, but the system, the teaching method, and lastly is the content as well. How do we rethink content to make content a lot more interactive? That's also going to become an issue. How do you embed that inquiry approach in the content that you build? Don't just stay in front of the camera and tell a kid about a science concept. It's not going to be enough. So how do we rethink that? I think those are the kind of things that I believe that tech startup needs to start to take seriously.
Fair enough. I think that's good. That's good. It's really interesting. Okay, so what are the biggest challenges CcHUB and other innovation hubs on the continent have faced as a result of COVID?
CcHUB, not so much. But I can explain it to you. Not the entire CcHUB. So when we acquired iHub, all right.
Yeah.
We acquired iHub from not the actual founder. Someone else already bought it from the founder.
Yeah.
We bought it from that person, and that person was trying to create the WeWork of Africa.
Okay.
So he actually wanted to also buy a few other hubs across Africa. I think when he bought iHub, he reached out to me as well to try and buy CcHUB. And he did the same for a few other things. But he wanted to create a co-working space.
Gotcha.
So that is the only part of CcHUB that is affected by the pandemic.
Gotcha.
Because the actual CcHUB moved away from being a co-working space. Right? CcHUB, we've been building communities around thematic issues in technology.
Okay.
Right. So we have a strong community. The people don't know this. We have a strong community around digital security, for instance.
When you say a community, I mean, is this a physical community? Is this a distributed community? What does that look like? And you know,
you can call it distributed. You can call it distributed, but I'll give you an example. So if we take two examples, if we take our community in education and our community in digital security, people don't know that there are quite a number of organizations in Nigeria that are under immense threats when it comes to security.
Yeah, sure they are.
Civil society organization, media organization. We've worked with different media organizations that their site have been attacked.
Makes sense, yeah.
And in a couple of hours, we were able to help them block the things like that. So we actually have a strong number of organizations that we work with. We have people that we call, what name do my people call it now? But we have like security experts who actually go out to companies to train, but also help them understand their vulnerability and how to prepare for it. So that is a large community on its own. And those kind of people don't necessarily need to come into CcHUB. Our education community is all over Nigeria. That's one of our biggest communities. Schools, Ministry of Education, all across Nigeria that we work with. We work quite closely with Ministry of Education in Lagos State and Ogun State, for instance. Tai University of Education, we have a center there.
Gotcha.
That is also focused on trying to find ways to improve how we train in-service teachers. We have foreign partners in education. We also have, when you say Science Teachers Association of Nigeria, we work quite closely with them. We even have an award that we've set up for them right now. So that's a community again, because we know that community needs technology strongly. But what we also do with them is that they also serve as our test bed.
Okay.
So if there's any education solution in our portfolio, we can easily open that community to them. So we've started shifting away from that. We've started doing a lot of work in corporate innovation. And what that means is that for us is we're not a co-working space.
Gotcha.
In fact, my biggest problem now is how to open back CcHUB, because the co-working space part of CcHUB is a tiny part of the work we do. And all of my people are doing their work from home.
Gotcha.
So they're reluctant to go back. Gotcha. So to answer that question, the pandemic is causing pain for tech hubs that are focused on co-working spaces. But the pandemic is a massive opportunity for tech hubs that are focused on real application of technology and innovation. Because the only thing the pandemic is asking for at this moment is the need for us to be innovative, the need for us to apply technology.
You guys acquired iHub in September. So have you been able to make a lot of that kind of transition with iHub as well? Or were they already pretty far along that line before you guys acquired?
No, they weren't. They weren't on that part. But we're making good progress. Unfortunately for us, the pandemic came, which got in the way of that. But I need to tell you this: that iHub is an extremely exciting platform. I don't think there's anything like it on the continent. It was the first in real sense, not necessarily. I don't think it was the actual first, but it was the first innovation hub on the continent. Yeah. iHub's community is all over the world. The brand is extremely exciting. So for us, it really just is about building a strong team around iHub, and that's the work that we're doing at the moment. We're also beginning to also focus strongly on more building community as against a co-working space. Right? How do we leverage that community that is rich to focus on the real issues that we face in technology? For instance, to use iHub, I think it's about $75 a month. I don't see how the average African young person can pay that. So we're also trying to break that barrier to make sure that it's a lot more inclusive, just like we've done in Lagos. Nairobi is quite unique. We're extremely excited about the opportunity. It's a journey. Unfortunately, Corona is making it to take a lot longer. When we started our design lab in Kigali, in less than 12 months, we generated almost enough revenue to keep the place running for at least 2 years. That's the exciting opportunity that that came with that, and we see that with iHub as well. We think, you know, even without doing much, you know, you can turn iHub around excellently. They were doing okay. But we think iHub has a role to play in the Pan-African movement as we see it today. You know, iHub and Nairobi can become you know, a serious enabler for innovation across the continent, not only just for Kenya. And that's what we're excited about.
Okay. Someone's asking, you know, do you think the CcHUB model can be replicated in other cities in Nigeria? You know, what advice would you have for anyone trying to do that?
It's a common question. I've seen quite a number of people try to replicate it. I've not seen anyone done it successfully, because what people think they're replicating is not what they're replicating most of the time. So I think if you're thinking of replicating it, you need to know what it is. But if I'm to give any advice on anything away in terms of how you go about replicating, if you go to a city, right, start by understanding the strength of that city and ask yourself the question, how can technology enable the future of that strength? You know,
Gotcha.
If you can, and you know, name any city, right? Name any city. Let's go to Aba. You know, if you go to Aba, you know, is it difficult to figure out how to do a CcHUB successfully?
No.
Aba has been playing an exciting role in Nigeria for years. Will that exciting role that they play, will it need to be amplified with technology or not? You know, what can additive manufacturing do in Aba? You get what I mean? What can Internet of Things do in Aba? When you think of it that way, then, you know, being able to export it to other locations becomes really, really easy. I think you just need to make sure that you have clarity in terms of what you're doing. CcHUB is not just a space where people come to use internet and table. If that's what you want to replicate, it will always be a struggle.
Gotcha. Okay. Someone wants to know how to get into CcHUB, and I don't know if they mean the physical space or how would I get into CcHUB?
There are quite a number of ways to get into CcHUB. The space itself is there. We have free membership, which gives you access to our 6th floor. But that you have to have clear contribution to our community. You know, we created our free model where you can still get space, come use the space daily. But we also have a model where you can buy quarterly, probably the cheapest co-working space that you can find around. Again, take into consideration that the beauty of CcHUB is not the co-working space, which is why when all the sexy co-working spaces started coming into Lagos, you know, people thought we were going to be friends with, but we didn't even look that way, because that is not our work. And also, the community that we serve is not the community that we serve. That's the honest truth. It's not a community that, you know, those co-working spaces are not for ordinary people. You know, they're not. I've seen a co-working space in Nigeria that declared openly that, you know, they're serving the high end, CcHUB is serving the low end.
Do you want to name names?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So it's important to note, people of the audience, that CcHUB is not a co-working space. It's not a place to come and drink coffee and look sexy. The work, I mean, Bosun said 80% of their work is stuff you can't see. So that 80% is in building community, serving, the introduction of technology to improve other spaces, to improve whether it's education or existing industries, etc. And so that's the thinking you have to do in terms of replicating that model. And so if wants to get engaged with CcHUB, they have to figure out how they're contributing to that, and then what come happen.
No, that's just for the co-working space. For people with ideas who still want to use our incubation program, actually, because we work with quite a number of partners, we run tons and tons of those programs. Okay. Again, these programs will not necessarily be, you're not going to come into those programs and we give you the playbook of how to be successful. But you understand that if you come into those programs, there's so many things we can give to you. For instance, I've not mentioned the work we do in public health. Okay. Is extremely deep. Like, you see what LifeBank is doing with NIMA for They were the first private entity to be able to set up a COVID testing center with 9. You don't know how that is possible. We have a research R&D agreement with 9.
Gotcha.
Which is an ongoing agreement. So, there are quite a number of startups that we've supported at CcHUB who needed to do proper trials, and they can get that done with 9 easily. That's the kind of future that we want to build. CcHUB, for instance, we're working with a major drug manufacturing company and a consortium to use design thinking to help understand how to reduce, maternal mortality.
Yeah.
So that's the level of work. When I say people can't see, it's not because it's secret. It's just because for us, and the reason why we do this, again, I repeat it, the reason why we do it is that we believe strongly that technology and innovation can unlock the development of our people and of our nation. And we have to look for ways to it. So if you have ideas, follow our incubation team. If you check on our website, you see their emails and how to apply to them. We have ad hoc programs for people who have great ideas. Again, a lot of people don't know we invest. We invest, CcHUB itself invests at the 20-25K. We do this every year, steady. Then we have Growth Capital, who is raising another round of investment that can invest up to 250K. We can still invest at the moment in about 1 or 2 more startups. So we actually do have early stage funding as well. It's a lot easier to get it through CcHUB than anyone else, I can assure you. If we like your idea. And because we're also crazy, we almost bet on things that are likely to fail. But also things that are likely to fail, but if they are successful, they can unlock what we want to see in society.
Gotcha.
Not things that can necessarily just unlock money for us. Of course, money is also part of it. We make our money. We expect our companies to return money to us. But remember that we believe that technology can change society. And that's the foundation of how we do our work. It's not a cup of tea for some other people. Some other investors will be looking at you and saying, how much money can you generate? Which is fine. It's a perfect way of also doing business. But that's not the thesis for us.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so speaking still on investments, somebody wants to know if you want equity in all your startups, and what's the range of equity investments, that's percentage that CcHUB owns in your portfolio?
CcHUB, I generally don't want to give numbers, but we do single digits. The most we do is 7%, to be honest.
Gotcha.
And typically very early stage companies where we invest maybe 25, 30K. That's what we do. I don't know, but we don't do more than C.
Gotcha.
We're not the kind of business. We've seen enough startups to understand that if we invest in you and we try to own 30 or 40%, that 30 or 40% is going to become zero.
Very good.
Because we've invested in people that they wake up and they don't return to CcHUB. I'm still going to write books about this. We've invested in heavily trained people, right? Who on their own went on, changed their company to a US not-for-profit company. This is a very popular person in Nigeria without even telling us. And we lost everything in it. We can sue, we can use legal proceedings and things like that to claim back. But we've seen enough. So for us, it's not really about coming and we're saying we want to take 30%. If we take 50%, we know you stay on. If you leave tomorrow, we're not going to run that.
Gotcha. Fair enough. This question is super clear. Aili Angula Molina wants to know, what are the chances that you can spread these tech ideas in other African countries, such as Namibia? I guess that's the question around using to move things forward. Can
it be scaled? Of course, we're already scaling what we do. Of course, we can't be in every African country. But we believe that countries like Namibia, Namibia has a strong role to play. Southern African countries, rather, they have a strong role to play. I think the level of development there and certain level of sophistication can be applied in more productive ways across the continent. I think it's a region that typically is almost outward looking when it comes to Africa.
Okay.
So when people innovate in that region, and again, I'm probably generalizing, but I know it's the fact for South Africa, which also touches on places like Botswana and the likes, where a lot of the innovation you see there think more outside of the continent. But I think there's tons of opportunities on the continent that region can leverage. So there's a need for that continent to understand the rest of the continent. Sorry, there's a need for that region to understand the rest of the continent, and there's a need for the rest of the continent to understand that region. I think our generation, and I use this loosely because I've said our generation with some people before, and they looked at me and said, "Dude, you don't belong."
Sorry, Uncle. Papa. Which generation?
So I'm not trying to claim what I don't belong to, but I think our generation and the generation coming after us should think more Pan-African. I think that question comes back to that thinking around distributed innovation system, which also CFDA is a strong part of. It gives us immense opportunity to leverage know-hows that may be too big for, say, a Namibian market, for instance, but has immense opportunity, say, in Nigeria or in Ghana, another large market. If you think of Europe, for instance, when someone is building, you think of countries like Luxembourg. How big is Luxembourg? How are they able to build competitiveness around a strength? When you think of Switzerland, for instance, they were able to build competitiveness around the strength. Almost every country that you find in Europe, they try to understand where they're good, they leverage it well enough, and they leverage the other market. Think of Germans, for instance.
Yep.
Think of how much trade goes on between Germany and UK. And the UK is also a country that is technologically advanced. Think of how many German cars are sold to the UK. The UK manufacture cars as well, right? But still, they still buy a lot. And it doesn't mean that UK is also not playing in automobile. UK play a lot in Formula One, for instance. Most of the cutting-edge technologies there come out of some of the UK companies that are playing in that space. So I think Africa needs to start to think in that direction, and that's where opportunities like what you're asking for in Namibia, yes, it is transferable, but also Namibia should be thinking of what do we have that we can transfer.
That's fair. I think that's really important. Okay, so Ayaboni Akindole wants to know about how you thought about exits when you started the CcHUB journey, and what's your current thinking on exits in your investment thesis? So when you guys invest,
it's still something that is evolving. I think people like TD and the leaders in the investment space will probably have stronger opinion on this.
Jason has some very, very strong opinions.
Say that again.
Jason has some very strong.
Oh yeah,
Jason has some very.
Yeah, Jason has been in the game for a while, so he should. But I think where I think about it is that we're still unclear what path we're going to take, and part of that lack of clarity for me, even though people have answers, but we can't see many of them. I think part of that clarity for me is that the current wave of technology still sits outside of the actual business environment on the continent. And I think the more we start to embed the startup ecosystem with our real business environment, the better you're going to see for us in terms of exit. I think exit in Africa will become really exciting as some of the traditional big old organizations, as they start to get threatened by the reality of the world that we live in, and they realize that they don't have the capacity to build from scratch, but that they can acquire companies or invest in companies that can make things exciting. As we start to build more businesses that can scale and reach market, then you can start to talk more about IPOs. I think also exits, one thing I've been doing a lot in the last couple of months is also engaging stock exchange, both in Rwanda and Nigeria. I think there's also opportunities there. Our stock exchange is quite weak, for instance, but one thing they're not paying attention to is that the next set of companies that can actually get listed on that stock exchange, most of them are tech companies. Because all the ingredients that you want in a listed company, tech companies have them naturally, starting with corporate governance. Because once you start to collect VC money, they force you to put governance structure in place. And that's one of the critical things that you need to have in place before you can get listed on the market. So I think we need to start to engage people like that, to educate them, whether they need to sell some parallel market or resuscitate whatever parallel market that is there. They need to understand how to reduce the requirements to fulfill the needs. If a startup is raising, $100 million, $200 million in Africa, why should that startup struggle to be listed? And once we get to that stage, as these startups start to organically truly scale, not scale just for money, and capture serious market share, I think we need to continue to engage stock exchange to encourage them. So on the listing side, that will happen. As we start to integrate the startup ecosystem with the real business environment, strong real acquisitions will also begin to happen. And I think exit is going to become a lot clearer. That's my perspective. I'm sure there's stronger opinions on how to.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I've got like kind of a more foundational question from Bill Abdulazim. So how do I start up strongly and sustainably as a tech entrepreneur? I guess young tech people thinking about starting in this space, what should they be thinking about right now?
I think people need to understand that if you look around you, there's so many areas within our economy, whether it's in business or consumer or even in the public sector, in the social space. If you can step back and think through thoroughly those non-consumption markets, some of them may require that you have to create the market yourself. And it's been done a few times. When we started CcHUB, there wasn't really much to model after. All the capital and funding and support that we got came from abroad. No one locally wanted to support us. Two key supports that we got was from One Cable Company in terms of practical cash. They gave us internet from day one till today. It's still free. And the funding from the Tony Elumelu to our startups. But Tony didn't fund us directly. We're even paying the expenses on the bank charges. So you will find that, but again, we were very grateful for that support. That's me not saying we're grateful for it, because that helped us to really demonstrate to the market what was possible. So I think that's where most people need to focus. Ensure you focus on those non-consumption. Don't be afraid to build a market. Just make sure that you have clarity in terms of what market you're building and why you're building. A lot of people in the startup ecosystem will tell you they don't respect CcHUB. People have strong opinion. And those are mostly people who think more towards the American way of thinking about startup ecosystem, which everything revolves around valuation and money. But we're proud of what we do. We've never begged for food. We've never begged for food. My people are well paid. We generate enough revenue to keep the business running. And we support enough businesses. Some are successful, some are not. But we also did see the value that we bring to the ecosystem as well, and we're proud of that work. So again, don't model yourself against one way of looking at value creation. A way of looking at value creation is that you have to raise 100 million immediately in 2 years, or you have to raise a significant amount of money. You may just end up building a business that will solve significant problems. Yours may take 5 years, 10 years to scale. It took us about 9 years to be able to move into other countries. But we're doing it. We're doing it, and we're doing it sustainably. We'll probably still expand into 1 or 2 more. And hopefully we can grow to a state where we compete with really serious business. In these 10 years, I've seen a lot of people who speak the Silicon Valley language try to set up what we came to the market to do. And they crashed in less than 2 years. So tell me, which one is better? The guy that speaks about a lot of money, who can't run a sustainable entity, or us that we believe in creating value, and we run an entity that is creating close to 100 jobs. It depends on. Can we create 1,000 jobs? Of course we can, and maybe we're on that path. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. I think we've come to an end to this. Unfortunately, I can't take any more of the questions, but thank you so much for joining us, Bosun. Thank you, everyone who joined us. And if you're not already subscribed to TechCabal's newsletter, please subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you all very much. Check out the atcg.community and join the Africa Tech and Creative Group. We're pushing the AFCFT across the continent. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bosun. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
All right.
Had a good time. Thank you.